everybody, it's me, Laura, and today I'm back with another set of jewelry, and this is my scrap teapot and cup jewelry set, okay, or my earrings, I should say. And really, when I think about it, these are not my favorite colors. Normally, I go towards bright colors, and you guys know how I love that. But this time around, I had some scrap brown that was, I kind of twisted it up and made it into these stripes. And I thought I'd bring in my Keoker cutters here. These are, I love this set. It's a teapot and cup set. And these particular cutters, the little rounded kind of teapot, oh, they're so cute. I thought, let's go ahead and make some of these in this scrap kind of brown stripy clay, right? The stripe, I want to say the stripes were actually rolled out on a number 4 or 5 setting, and then the black behind it was also rolled out on like a number 5 or even 6 setting. I didn't want it terribly thick, but I wanted to go ahead and kind of stretch out the clay a little bit so I could use it in more than just one set, but I could bring in things like my teacups here and use those as well. So as I go about trying to pick out which cups I want to use from this particular cutter set, and even teapots as well, I'm going to cut down and fill up the entire piece of clay I've got going on here. And some of these particular cups, I had to put them at an angle, and those were the ones I liked the best. Sometimes symmetry is great, but sometimes it's almost better if you just, whatever happens, happens, because that can actually be the better solution overall. Anyway, once I got that done, I'm coming in with my needle tool here, and I'm just taking out the little inner parts on my cutter. Sometimes they don't always come out, they get stuck down in there and you're like, okay, great. So I use my needle tool to just kind of trace out, the little handles. And you'll notice there, the one little handle did not quite go so great there. And believe it or not, that's one of the pots we're going to use. And I'll show you how I go about mending that particular thing in a little bit. Once I got all of those little pieces cut out on the handles, I'm bringing in my blade to kind of lift off each of these pieces and place them on a separate tile. And you're like going, okay, well, why are you doing that? Because I've already got, here's the thing, I'm only going to be working with really 4 pieces here. I don't need all of this. Some of these other pieces will be put off to the side. I'm debating or not whether I should do a video on it. Let me know, because they're still sitting here, not quite finished. So if you want me to do more on this sort of thing, please leave me a comment, in the section on this video. I would love to hear from you on that. Okay, so right here I've got my teapot going on, and you'll notice here I'm bringing my needle tool to define up around where the spout is, where the handle is. It didn't do that when I put the cutter down. It was so faint. And I thought, no, I want a distinctive line. So I went back in with that needle tool, and notice how I rock it back and forth from the edge of where the teapot ends, right? From the one point, where the tile, anyway, I think you get it. Anyway, here I'm just kind of defining up the little indented areas then on that teapot. When I was done defining up the area around on the teapot, with the handle and the spout and the lid and everything, I brought in some peach clay, and I also brought in my circle Kemper cutters. And I wanted to add in just a little bit of extra detail, and I like doing this. Instead of just having the plain cutter form, I like to add in stuff on top. And I want to say that peach clay, it was rolled out on a number 5 setting, 4 or 5. It's fairly thin clay. I figure, the pot itself was a little thick, so we can go a little thinner on top. It's not a problem. And I took 2 circles with that. It was kind of towards the middle size of those Kemper cutter circles. I took a couple of those and I went ahead and just placed those right down in the center of the pots. And then I'm bringing in this fan folded blue to yellow Skinner blend cane. I'm going to cut this thing in half, and I'm going to get this thing, it's pretty big in my mind. I'm going to get this really tiny. This thing was probably, I want to say it was like 1/4 of an inch or under. Easy. I mean, it was a little tiny itty bitty rolled up cane, right? And I wanted it that way because we're going to cut a couple of slices of it. See, 1/4 of an inch. Yeah, okay. little itty bitty tiny thing. We're going to go ahead and cut a couple of slices of this. I bring in my needle tool. I'm going to drag a line up the center. I'm going to make a little tiny point on the one end there, on the yellow end, and then kind of a little bit of a point towards the bottom with the blue, and I'm going to place that right into that circle, and I'm going to make 3 of these and have that be kind of a floral pattern inside that peach-like circle. Once I have my floral pattern all taken care of on both of these teapots, I'm going to bring in a little piece of black that I've rolled out on a number 5 setting on my Atlas pasta machine. You could go in number 4 too, it doesn't matter. You know, you just want this fairly thin. And notice here I just cut off a strip of it, right? It's a pretty thin strip. It's, oh gee, it might be 1/8 of an inch. I mean, I'm guessing here a little bit, but it's pretty thin. And the reason for this is I'm going to be cutting off 4 sections, excuse me. And once I do that, I'm going to place those around on the handle. So I'll take this little section here and notice where I had that cut, right? And it kind of ripped up on me. This is a nice way to mend that little handle, and it still looks like a detail. And it looks great, right? Because this way it's like, oh wow, that's kind of like an extra little detail you wouldn't naturally put into something like this. I mean, when they give you those cutters, okay, you get a cutter set, either from Keoker or any of them, right? The thing is that this is just your basic format. From there, you build off of it. You create something really fun and different. And that's why I like doing this, because in some ways, I think I was channeling my steampunk. I was like going, yeah, steampunky, we're going, yeah, you know, my little belts idea. Yeah, I think there was a little bit of channeling here. And really, if you think about it, if it's at all possible, I don't know how you could. I mean, maybe you could do a little stitched area and, you know, put in maybe a couple of little, steampunk things. It's a thought. It's just a thought, guys. But, you know, it's something to think about. Maybe I'll do a video on that. Let me know on that one if you like that idea. Let me know. I'll do something on that too. Anyways, once I did it on the handle, I thought, let's go ahead and do it around the spout too. And so I just added in this little black strip. To me, it really made, you know, this start to come to life. You know, that brown, I get overwhelmed by so much of it. I know. It's like, it's okay, Laura. It's not your usual format of colors that you like to play in. And this is another thing you need to remember. When you're playing in your polymer clay, you will notice over time, if you do it enough like I do, that you tend to go towards a certain, color scheme, okay? You know, challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to try something outside of that. And for me, this was a challenge because browns, like I said, it's not my favorite, set of colors I like to play in. But once you get there, you're like, oh, well, maybe I could try this. Maybe I could try. And pretty soon you're going to be like, that turned out better than I thought. Maybe I should try this scheme or this color format maybe a little bit more often. Now, once I have the black put in around on the handles and on the spout and everything, I thought I'd take some yellow, and I created a couple of balls, and we're just going to try and liven up the darker area where the blue is. And we put you might say, a center of the flower with the yellow instead of like a black. It's dark enough with, the brown there and the black. We needed a little bit more of a lighter color. Remember, polymer clay is a game of contrasts. So remember that as you're doing it. You're also noticing here with my needle tool that I'm inserting it into the top, the bottom, and into the spout of the teapot. And that is so that I can go ahead and bake these at 275 degrees for about 7 to 10 minutes. And when they're done then, when those particular teapots are all baked up, I will have the openings necessary to put in the eye pins that I need and the little bit of frou-frou wire for the steam to come out of the pot. All right, so now I got to choose which particular cups I wanted to use. And as you could tell, I went right to those diagonal type striped cups. I just thought they look really cool, right? I mean, there's a little more interest there than just, plain stripes either running up or running down, or even sideways. It's at a diagonal. I love that. So anyways, I brought in that plain peach again. And when I was looking at the circle cutters, I was like going, okay, these little cups are kind of smaller. So I had to go to a little bit smaller size on the circle cutter. And once I did that, I also had to alter, I only used one little petal in this, and that's okay because you don't want it to kind of, the teapots are kind of the main highlight here. And yes, I did kind of drop these down and I used them at an angle, which I thought was really kind of cool. But I needed to make sure that the element of the little, it's kind of like the cup is supposed to, how do I put this? To me, it's supposed to kind of be like a nod to the teapot. It's kind of your bigger piece that, when it comes to a teapot and teacup set, the teacup is kind of like, okay, I'm going to give the teapot the floor and let it speak. and then the cup will just kind of be there as the accent, if you will, to that teapot. Anyway, that's kind of how I look at them. I mean, that's just me. Okay, maybe you look at it differently. If you want to add more, do it. I don't mind. You have fun, Anyway, putting in that little petal there, and then I'll of course put in that little yellow point, or I should say ball at the very bottom there, to also add in for extra, little extra detail. You also notice there, I went ahead and cut off the bottom of the petal because it was just way too big for my little circle there. So if you need to do that, do that. It works out really good. Okay, so I brought in my needle tool, and instead of going right down directly in the center of the cup, I'm doing it right at the edge here, kind of a little bit in from where the handle is, because when we go to attach these into the teapots, they will hang like they are tipping. All right, so now the teapots and the cups have been baked, and I'm taking them off my tiles. And right here now, once I have that done, I'm bringing in my blade and I'm kind of going around on the outside edges of my teapots and my cups and making sure any extra, oh, how do I put it? Klingon type clay. Again, the Star Trek reference. Sorry. But any extra little pieces you didn't want in that particular teapot are taken out. Once I have that done, I'm bringing in my black clay. This has been rolled out on a number 4 setting on my Atlas machine. I then bring in my eye pins and I'm going to place that down right on the top of that black clay. Just kind of press it down gently and lightly, and then I'll bring in one of the teapots and place a little bit of my super glue, just a little bit in the center, and then a little bit of my liquid clay on the teapot. I'll place that down onto where the eye pin is, so I've got it centered right where the hole at the top of the teapot is, and place that right over the top. Use my needle tool to go ahead and trace out the teapot itself. Now that I have the extra black kind of cut away from this teapot inside the handle and so on, I'm bringing in another of my silver eye pins. I'm going to cut it fairly short, and I'm going to add just a little touch of super glue, use my needle nose plier, and insert that right into the bottom where I had made that pre-formed hole, and push that right up using my needle nose plier into the bottom of the teapot. This will be where that cup can hang. It'll be really nice. And then I'm bringing in another eye pin, and I'm going to put down the other teapot as well. With the teapots finished up with their eye pins, I'm bringing in another eye pin. I'm going to place it down on the bottom part of that black, and we're going to bring in our cups now. And I made those tiny little holes right at the top there off to the one side. You use a little super glue, a little liquid clay, and place those right over where that hole I had inserted earlier, right where that eye pin is at. It'll match up nicely, and it'll be sunk in so that it's not going to just rip out because it's got a little bit of that hook going on as well. When this is finished though, you're going to take the cups and the teapots here. You're going to bake these at 275 degrees for about 7 to 10 minutes. Now mind you, that 7 to 10 is variable depending upon where you live, your altitude, and so on. So check where you live. If you live more towards like sea level, it's probably going to be a longer baking time than what I do here. Now that our teapots and our cups have been baked thoroughly, I'm bringing in my Silver Anniversary metallic paint by Folk Art, and we're going to highlight parts of the teapot and the cups. And here's the thing, these were fairly dark, I will admit. I mean, the brown, it was pretty dark, and the silver to me really made a huge difference. It added in that extra contrast that I really needed. when you do this and you feel like you're looking at a piece and you're like, oh my goodness, this really seems dark and it really doesn't speak to me, bring in the opposite of whatever you're missing. Again, that game of contrast. If it looks too dark, bring in something a little bit lighter, a white, a silver, something that's going to be on the lighter side, and add that into the details. That can make all the difference in the world to the piece you're working on. And for me, it really did here. It was, it made it go from like, okay, this is dull and boring, to something like, oh my gosh, it's a party now. And I think you'll enjoy that so much more. So if it's not really speaking to you, you're like, oh my gosh, this looks horrible, go in with something lighter. Even after you have baked the clay entirely, your paint can be that savior. It could be saying, use me, bring me about, and it will make all the difference in the world. Now, as I was painting this, right, and I got done with the silver, I brought in my black. I needed to go ahead and blacken up the top part of that cup. And when I did, I know that I was saying, okay, it's fairly dark already. Well, the black is a little bit darker than that brown, right? So it kind of made that brown a little bit lighter, which is what I wanted. And in doing so, though, I also had to bring in just one more lighter highlight. Well, actually two more. I needed to bring in my white, and I needed to bring in a little bit of a gold. And my Golden Touch acrylic paint, my metallic acrylic, seemed to really fit that bill because I could just take and put a little bit on each petal on these little flowers I had placed into the teapots. And then I could also highlight the cups as well. Okay, now that I got those little golden touches in there, I decided to go ahead and put these things together. You get to a point where you're like going, I want to put it all together. I want to get this thing, where I wanted to see what it would look like because of how I had placed the eye pins into the cups themselves. So I brought in some jump rings here, and my larger ones, I was looking at that, I was prepping them, and I thought, no, that's too big. I need some smaller little jump rings, and so I had the little smaller one. But before I addressed that problem, I decided to bring in those pointed back rhinestones. I need to get this put in, right? These little rhinestones, they are tiny. They were probably like, I want to say about a 2 millimeter in diameter type rhinestone. So these are very tiny. I think their system, they call it like an SS4 or an SS6. which is why I had to use my tweezers to place these into my teapots cups. And I struggled a little bit because, you know, you have a little bit of that super glue. Sometimes it takes a little bit just to get them in there and push them into place. But once I had those in, then I'm going to start bringing in those jump rings and joining up my teapot to my cup. And you'll notice, yes, I definitely went with the smaller jump ring. The big ones were just too big. They were too big, and I thought, no, this is not going to work. We need to go to that smaller jump because I didn't want a lot of space between the cup and the teapot itself. I need to have as little space as possible. And then once I got these jump rings where I joined it all up, I brought in that Posca white 7.7 millimeter paint marker. And you guys knew I was going to do this, right? She's going in with that Posca one more time. But I love my Posca. What can I say? It adds in that extra little detail that I don't have to think about it. I could just pick it right up instead of going to a white acrylic paint and then I have to drag out the brush. I have to rinse the brush out. This is just a quick, easy detail I can add in and I don't really have to think about it. It's just simple dots. And if you're doing simple dots, my Posca really to me is my godsend. It's my thing I can just go to and not have to really think on it. Once I got that done though, I'm going to bring in a little surprise and we're going to add in some very simple little clay hearts. And these hearts were pre-made using my Kemper heart cutters, just some little tiny ones to add in that extra detail on the teapot and into the cup itself as well. I thought I could have gone just with the little floral feature, but no, we want just a smidgen more, a little more detail, right? You know? And I also added in then a little bit of that Posca marker with some detail on the heart itself as well. And notice here I used red on the top and then I used a little white one on the bottom. I wanted to just punch it, punch it on that cup. After this, I went ahead and brought in that 30 gauge silver wire and created my little steam for the teapots. Anyway, from here, I'm going to go ahead. I'll let you guys watch my hands talk as I finish up my teapot and teacup earring set. All right, so this is the end result of creating my scrap teapot and cup jewelry set. Please use this for study and reference. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I'm always wondering what you're thinking. Otherwise, I'm sending out my biggest hugs to each of you, and I hope you have a fantastic day.